long I prayed it would go away. Waking up again the same way. I just need someone to love.
Welcome back. We're here talking about the fifth song on the CD Unwanted, and it's Someone to Love. And you know, I think most people want to be loved and want to love. I think God put that in us. So what was behind your reasoning for writing that song?
Well, I'll never forget it. It took me like 15 minutes to write the entire song, which is pretty amazing. I think I had the lyrics in like 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes later God gave me the melody. And oddly enough, I had watched a gay-themed movie that was all about these two men who were struggling in their homosexuality, and one of the characters' desire was so much to connect with this man and just have someone in his life that would love him. And the other guy, I think, wanted that, but he was so fearful and struggling to even embrace his own sexuality, much less another human being in a relationship. And you know, that's where the opening verse is all about that, you know. And then the second verse is, you know, why do you say that I am so wrong? You know, Scripture tells us that there's a way that seems right unto a man. You know, we have these feelings, we have these desires in our heart, and I think God's put sexuality in all of us, and I think that sexuality is magnetic. It draws us to each other, you know. Genesis writes, or the author of Genesis writes, that God took a rib out of Adam and fashioned Eve, and I think there's that magnetic pull in all of us to unite with other, you know, with that missing part in us. And you know, I think in homosexuality you have a dynamic where you're having some of those missing characteristics you're trying to connect with in another human being of the same sex. And you know, second verse is, you know, God, I'm not getting this. You know, I'm even praying that I would be different, but I'm waking up the same way the next day, and I'm still in this pattern of going a different direction than you want me to go. But I have these desires that are pulling me that way. I have loved men of the same sex in the way this movie was describing. And but the reality is that even in the best of homosexual relationships, there's something lacking. But also in heterosexual relationships, there could be something lacking as well. I mean, even though you've got a man and a woman coming together, you know, if God's not in the mix, it's not going to be what He intended, because He built us for relationship with Him. I think Scripture tells us that by Him and for Him and without Him nothing was made. So that was God's intentions for us to, you know, to be in relationship with Him. And you know, He made them male and female, and they were in His likeness. But the third verse is transitional, because I got to this place where, you know what, I need to love God in the way that I need to love Him, and by getting outside of myself and loving Him, that I go a different direction, so I can look in the mirror at a new man, a man that doesn't think that he has to find his identity in another human being, or that another human being is somehow going to complete him. But that God completes us, and then we're open and healthy for God to bring into our lives whomever He sees fit. You know, a compliment, a helpmate, someone that would compliment me just as you do, someone who can help me just as you have. And just as we are working in a ministry that is all about us, you know, bringing together our gifts, and us not outside of ministry, in our home life, where you know, I have some strengths, but you have far more strengths in that arena, and I'm thankful for that. But God knew that when He brought us together, and the whole point of the ending is, you know what, at first, God, I wondered if You were even there. Were You even hearing my prayer and my despair? And He was, and He does. And you know, the second chorus says, you know what, You're really there. And you know, all my life I was Mr. Wrong, now You've made me Mr. Right. And you know, it's right in this relationship because of our compatibility, but it's also Mr. Righteousness, that Jesus has taken my sin and giving me his righteousness. So now I'm Mr. Right in God's sight, because I now have his son's righteousness. I'm in his son by faith, and I love that.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. And we thank you for joining us for Someone to Love. And for those of you who that hasn't happened, talk to God.
That's
He
right.
does hear prayers.
Yes, he does.
Hear prayers.
He's really there.
He's really there.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.